Welcome everyone to the Chapter Treasurers Training Webinar, where we take a look at the responsibilities you will have as a member of the Board of Directors for your chapter. My name is Caitlin Clear, and I'm the Senior Staff Accountant, along with Greg Davis, Director of Accounting with ASTA, and we are your presenters today.
Hello.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. This webinar is focused on getting you started with fulfilling your duties as the treasurer for your ASTA chapter. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available online. A chapter treasurer's manual and a link to this webinar will be made available to your chapter. Remember, as you are engaging in activities as the treasurer, the ASTA staff is available to provide assistance as needed. Two important roles that you will have as a member of the Board of Directors will be that each of you will act in a fiduciary capacity for the chapter, and two, to safeguard the assets of the chapter. The definition of a fiduciary is one who holds something in trust for another. In this role, you will be answerable for any decision you make or participate in. Safeguarding the assets of the chapter is especially important for the treasurer and the president. The chapter board must have a chapter expense guideline and an approved budget. Within these guidelines, the president will approve all expenditures. Any expense outside of the budget or expense guidelines that are approved should be evidenced in the chapter board minutes. Please ask yourself before incurring an expenditure, does this expenditure benefit the chapter, its members, and the association as a whole? While in the treasurer's position, all bills will need to be paid in a timely manner as allowed by chapter guidelines. Prompt deposits into chapter bank accounts should be made, and receipts for audit purposes should be maintained. The Treasurer's Manual is a useful reference tool to assist you in completing your responsibilities as treasurer of your chapter. We will highlight the most important items from the manual in this webinar, but please be sure to look over the manual at your convenience, as it will have more detail. As always, we are here to help you. Now, over to Greg.
Thanks, Caitlin. By the way, Caitlin is a wonderful addition to our team this year, and you will be working with her closely with the chapters. Now, chapter financial policies. It's very important. All of the deadlines for financial reporting to national headquarters and the IRS must be met. Filing the annual 990 form with the IRS will allow the chapters to continue operations as a nonprofit entity. Filing the 990 form, the 1096 forms, and the 1099 forms in a timely manner will prevent the chapter from incurring any tax penalties, interest from the IRS. Each chapter should have a written procedure for cash disbursements. Why is this important? First, written procedures ensure that there's transparency within the chapter. Secondly, procedures help protect the assets of the chapter. And thirdly, procedures help protect the individual chapter board members. All chapter expenditures must be approved by the board as a whole, either through board minutes, chapter expense guidelines, or by the approved budget. Simply have the chapter president approve all expenses before paying. When it comes time to approve an expense that the chapter president has incurred, have another chapter board member besides the treasurer approve the expense. In no case may an officer approve their own expense report. Each chapter should have an approved chapter expense policy for reimbursement of board expenses. A copy of this approved policy should be sent to headquarters. For your reference, the chapter uniform expense policy can be found in the Treasurer's Manual on pages 2 through 6 of Part 3. These guidelines are what the treasurer will reference to reimburse expenses of each chapter officer. Also, with board minutes, after 2 weeks after a board after a board has their own, after a chapter board meeting, excuse me, within 2 weeks, submit the board minutes to Peter Labasso at PLOBASSO@asta.org. All chapters must operate on the same fiscal period as National ASTA, which is a calendar year. Year-end financial statements must be presented on the accrual basis. An example is when an invoice for a December 2018 service is received in January of 2019. This expense must be recorded in the December 31st, 2018 financial statements with a corresponding accounts payable recorded. Another example of accrual is a check received in January of 2019 for an event that occurred in December of 2018. The check should be recorded as revenue in the December 31st, 2018 financial statements with a corresponding accounts receivable recorded. The actual cash transactions that occur in January of 2019 would clear the accounts payable or accounts receivable balance. Financial statements should be prepared and presented by the treasurer to the chapter board monthly, but in no event less than quarterly. At the end of each year, the chapter executive committee must prepare and approve budget for the following year. On the banking practices, a minimum of 3 chapter officers should have signing authority. Having 3 signers will help the chapter to maintain normal operations in the event of travel or if an emergency arises where an officer that normally signs is not available. 1 individual from National ASTA must be a signatory on each bank account as directed by the National Board of Directors by the end of this year, December 31st, 2018. Peter Labasso has been in contact with the chapter officials. Please send us either of the 3 of us, Caitlin, myself, or Peter, if you have any further questions, any difficulties in getting us on the bank accounts. It is vital that the signature cards reflect the current board members as well. So please update the signature cards in a timely manner when there is a change in leadership. Each signatory should also have login capabilities to the bank account. This is to ensure that all transactions are following approved chapter financial guidelines. The bank statement should be reviewed on a monthly basis for accuracy of deposits and final approval of expenditures. This is an important and easy way to help protect the assets of the chapter. Chapter funds must be maintained in separate accounts and must not be commingled with the funds of the chapter treasurer's agency. If funds are accidentally deposited into an account that is not the chapter's bank account, this will tend to give the appearance of wrongdoing unless otherwise proven. Please notify us as well as the chapter board upon discovery so that we can instruct you on how to transfer the funds, what backup is to be kept, and what copies are to be sent to headquarters. Prompt and complete disclosure through documentation will protect you in the long run. The bank accounts of the chapter must be reconciled on a monthly basis, and no expenses should be paid without specific prior approval by another officer. Again, this protects the chapter and the treasurer. If the need arises to open up a new bank account, the full legal name of the chapter must be used. For example, the American Society of Travel Advisors Incorporated, Arizona chapter. The individual tax ID number of the chapter must be given to the bank as well. Please contact us if you need your chapter tax ID number or if your bank is requiring more information. Should your term of office as a chapter treasurer occur at a time other than December 31st, this would create a transitional period. This unique situation has been addressed by the ASTA National Board of Directors, where it was determined that the outgoing treasurer will be responsible for submitting the year-end financial statements for the fiscal year in which you leave office. So if your term is finished in September of 2019, then you will be responsible for submitting the December 31st, 2019 financial statements to National ASTA. Now, when the newly appointed treasurer's term begins, they will officially take office by sitting on the executive board. This will create a transitional period, which may be handled in one of three ways. Option 1, the incoming and outgoing treasurers share the bookkeeping duties. This would be a really good option should both be located close to each other. Option 2, the outgoing treasurer can continue to keep the books until the fiscal year is closed. With this option, the outgoing treasurer should close the books shortly after the December 31st bank statements are reviewed and turn the books over to the incoming treasurer. Option 3, the incoming treasurer can take over the bookkeeping duties at the time they take office. With this option, the incoming treasurer must keep the books current, so when the December 31st bank statements are received, the interim period transactions can be sent over to the outgoing treasurer with the bank statements for preparation of the December 31st financial statements.
Now to the exciting discussion of chapter insurance. National ASTA maintains an insurance policy on covering the chapter officers for unintentional wrongful acts which might occur in conducting chapter business, which is called Directors and Officers Policy. A separate commercial crime insurance policy is maintained by National ASTA to protect the chapter from losses caused by dishonesty. The cost of these policies will be divided equally among the chapters.
Even more fun, tax issues. National ASTA and its chapters are classified as a 501c6 organization by the IRS. This IRS classification provides for the tax exemption from federal and state income tax for trade associations. No part of the net earnings go to the benefit of any private individual. ASTA and its chapters, however, are not exempt from state sales or use tax. ASTA and the chapters are only exempt from federal and state income taxes, and then only on related business income. I will go a little deeper into unrelated business income in a few minutes.
Should your chapter receive any notices from the IRS, we strongly recommend that the correspondence be sent to ASTA headquarters. It can be sent to myself, Peter, or Greg. Once received, we shall evaluate the situation for the appropriate response.
If your chapter pays any one individual or any one non-incorporated entity $600 or more in a calendar year, the chapter will need to send an IRS 1099 MISC form copy B to that individual or entity. This 1099 form will need to be mailed to the recipient by January 31st of the following year. The chapter should request a W-9 form from any entity or individual that the chapter will be paying for any non-reimbursable expenses. Make sure the receipt of the W-9 is done before making any payments to this person or vendor. This will ensure that you will be ready to complete and send the 1099 forms at the end of the year. The blank W-9 forms can be found on the IRS's website. The W-9 forms should be kept in a secure manner, as these forms include tax ID numbers for entities and social security numbers for individuals. The next step is to mail a copy A of the 1099 MISC form along with the cover form 1096 to the IRS by February the 28th. The 1096 form is basically a cover sheet which includes the tax ID number of the chapter, a count of how many 1099 forms were sent in January, and the total dollar amounts of all of the 1099 forms that were sent. If there is no need for the chapter to send 1099 forms for the previous calendar year, then the chapter does not need to file the 1096 form with the IRS. The IRS requires that the 1099 MISC and 1096 forms be official printed versions that can be ordered directly from the IRS website or can be purchased at any office supply store like Staples or Office Depot. You can't download them from the IRS website, unfortunately. More detail regarding the 1099 and 1096 forms can be found in Part 10 of the Chapter Treasurer's Manual, which will also include specific links to the IRS website. And even more fun with taxes is unrelated business income. It would be rare for a chapter to have this, but it does need to be addressed just in case the situation arises. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, ASTA and its chapters are only exempt from federal and state income taxes, and then only on related business income. Unrelated business income is income from activities which are regularly carried on that is not substantially related to the organization's exempt purpose. As an example, income from the sale of advertising in regular newsletters would be unrelated income unless the majority of the newsletter is prepared by volunteers. If the receipts before expenses in a calendar year equal $1,000 or more, the chapter must file a 990T with the IRS by May 15th of the following year. This would be in addition to a 990 form. Please contact us for assistance should this situation arise with unrelated business income 990T form.
The Chapter 990 tax forms are due to the IRS by May 15th of the following year. Most chapters will fall under the simplest requirement for filing a 990N e-postcard for the year. The e-postcard is filed online by answering questions about whether gross revenue is normally below $50,000. If the chapter is still in business, the name of the principal officer and the address of the listed officer. We will send a financial package, and it is imperative that it be completed and returned to headquarters by March 1st. Please include all monthly operating bank statements, investment statements for the year ending period, December 31st, 2018, the data backup files from Quicken or QuickBooks when submitting financial statements. Headquarters will take the financial packet submitted by the chapters to complete the filing of the annual 990 form.
Now on to employment concerns. Sometimes a chapter will need some help outside of the chapter's executive board. The chapter should use a temp agency, management firm, or an independent contractor. When seeking outside help, the chapter needs to be careful of not creating a circumstance where federal regulations would define what the chapter perceives as an independent contractor as being an employee. Some circumstances that could create an employee-employer relationship are if the person works under direct control of the chapter. 2, if the time and place of the work performed is decided by the chapter. 3, if the chapter dictates how the duties are performed. And 4, if the individual is paid on an hourly basis. Now some circumstances that support an independent contractor relationship with a chapter would be if the chapter is paying a company such as a corporation or an LLC for services rather than an individual. if the person performs similar services for other similar organizations, or if there is a set fee for a set service, or if through their own expertise the person determines how the services are to be performed. Please forward a proposed contract to our legal department, Mr. Peter Labasso, before engaging in any third party. Why, you might ask? Having an employee will raise tax reporting issues that could violate state workers' compensation laws and exposes the society and individual chapter officials to unnecessary liability. Now, on to internal controls. Financial statements should be prepared monthly, but in no event less than quarterly. These statements should be presented to the chapter board as part of the treasurer's report and should be evaluated, measured against the annual budget for financial planning throughout the year. All bank accounts must be reconciled on a monthly basis. This will verify that all deposits are recorded by the bank while also verifying that there are no unfamiliar withdrawals from the account. Proper documentation with the appropriate approvals should be kept on file for all disbursements. As mentioned earlier, there should be a clear and traceable approval system for all disbursements, and the treasurer should be able to provide this backup to answer any questions regarding an expense item. A recommended records retention schedule is included in Part 11 of the Chapter Treasurer's Manual. Keep in mind that you don't need to keep all documents forever. Now let's take a look at the financial statement package for 2018. Be on the lookout. It'll be coming around January of 2019. Caitlin will be sending it out. All of the contained forms submitted should be completed in full and checked for accuracy. The IRS requires that the chapters follow the same reporting period as National ASTA, the calendar year. So the income statement must report all income and expense activities starting on January 1st of 2018 and ending on December 31st, 2018, and be presented on the accrual basis. This email from Caitlin will also state the beginning net worth balance of the chapter on January 1st of 2018. This should match the December 31st, 2017 net worth balance that the chapter submitted from the previous year. If it does not, please contact us, as most likely an accrual entry for the 2017 financial statements might have been needed, and we can discuss how to handle that on an individual basis. The forms from the financial package are due to headquarters on March 1st of 2019. By having these statements in a timely manner means that we will be prepared to file the 990 form with the IRS by the required May 15, 2019 due date for the chapter. It's also important that the chapter submits all monthly bank account and investment statements for the year 2018. We also require that the chapter submits data backup files from Quicken or QuickBooks. This will help us to not only answer any questions about the financial statements in a timely manner, but will also provide as a backup for the chapter. All right. An actual financial document. The format of the income statement closely resembles the IRS 990 EZ form. There are some chapters that we do need to file the 990 EZ form. Don't be fooled, easy does not necessarily mean it's easy, it's just easier than the 990 form. So please keep the categories in a similar format of the blank income statement included with the package, should you use Quicken or QuickBooks to print out the income statement. For a few items on the income side, please distinguish income from any board meeting as compared to a membership meeting. Should not have dues income. Dues income only comes to National ASTA. Should you receive any payments, just contact us. We'll let you know how to handle that situation. Sometimes it's necessary to put in income and sometimes expense as well, but that doesn't fall under any of these categories, so you'll have to use other income. If that's the case, please list details of what that other income is. So break it out between different functions of income, should it not fit in the top tier of income there on the P&L. For the expense side, rent expense should only be used if the chapter rents a space year-round to house administrative operations. Renting a room to hold a meeting is an expense to be classified as a meeting expense. Travel expenses are typically reimbursements of officers for official chapter business. Just like income, please distinguish between the board meeting and membership meeting expenses. Officers' expenses would include direct costs to the chapter for an officer's leadership training or meeting attendance. And also on the expense side, lobbying expense does not need to match the amount on the lobbying form that we're going to see here in a few minutes. IRS rules, so we'll get into that here in a second. Now, on to the next financial sheet, the balance sheet. This is where you will find a list of, this is where you're actually going to list all of your bank and investment accounts, along with any accounts receivable as assets. Any accounts payable or other liabilities listed as well under liabilities. And then the net worth of the chapter is calculated from subtracting the liabilities from the assets. If you do submit the balance sheet from Quicken or QuickBooks, please do the reconciliation at the bottom of this balance sheet form, which takes the net worth from the end of last year, adding or subtracting the net income or loss for 2018, which will give you the December 31st, 2018 net worth. This should match what is on the Quicken balance sheet. Alrighty. The chapter questionnaire form. This form asks about whether the chapter had an employee in 2018, just ensuring that the chapter didn't. Also asks if you viewed this training webinar, if the chapter had $1,000 or more in unrelated business income, and whether a 990T form should be filed with the IRS. Next form. The Chapter 1099 status form is due to National ASTA by January the 31st of 2019 to ensure that we are fulfilling the filing requirements by the IRS in a timely manner. Next form, authorization form. This is just a simple signature, but this allows us to file the 990 form for the chapter. All right, so it's November. So at the next board meeting, if the chapter hasn't done so already, they should be preparing a budget and have it approved in the budget in the board meeting minutes. It looks very similar to the 2018 income statement. To start with this process, first take a look at the prior year's actual income statements for historical data, and then talk with the chapter board about any changes that are planned to occur during the year 2019. Again, take this information to the board meeting, either have it approved or amended and evidenced in board minutes that are submitted to Peter Labasso within a couple weeks of the meeting. All right, next form. All persons that were an officer at any time in 2018 must be listed on this form, along with their address, title, average hours of work, compensation, and expense account allowances or stipends. Reimbursements that follow the chapter expense account guidelines should not be listed on this form. Next form. Lobbying expenditures. The IRS requires us to report expenditures related to lobbying or the attempt to influence specific legislation at the state or federal level. Influencing legislation are the key words. Any attempt to influence legislation through communication with any member or employee of a legislative body or with any government official or employee who may participate in the formulation of legislation would be a lobbying expenditure. Sorry, that's an IRS definition. It's very long. Direct lobbying costs must be reported along with any expenses incurred as a result of research, preparation, and other background activities for the purpose of making or supporting any of the direct lobbying communications. So what you'll need to complete is under question 1. Enter the total amount of chapter lobbying expenditures made for the calendar year of 2018. And this total should not include outside lobbyists. For question 2, if your chapter uses or has an outside lobbyist or belongs to an association or coalition, your dues invoice or final year-end statement will specify the amount to which your dues payment is or is not deductible. Please indicate the amount that is not deductible. Next form. Payment and services form. Please indicate whether the chapter paid for any services rendered in 2018. This can be done by listing the individuals or company names, amount paid to each, along with brief details regarding the service agreement with the chapter. Alrighty. We'll also have a checklist that looks very similar to this. This is just an easy way to double check that all of the forms that headquarters needs. You can just run through the list, check them off, and then send them on over to us. All right. On the screen, you'll find contact information for Caitlin and myself. Feel free to contact us. Any questions, any help you might need. Each chapter is unique, so you might find that you have a question that wasn't specifically covered in this webinar. Let us know and we'll help. Now, I'd like to take some time to see if there's any questions. Feel free to type in questions at the bottom right of the GoToWebinar box. If we have any questions. Well, let's go over a few other things. I don't see any questions at the moment. I did mention earlier that we should have, I think all of the chapters at this point, they're going to be on Quicken or QuickBooks, or at least minimum probably an Excel spreadsheet. Whatever you keep the financials information on, whatever database you're using, please send us a copy of that with the financial statement package. That really helps us in certain times. Sometimes there's transfers between savings and the operating bank account, and we can search that. Maybe something will be classified as a miscellaneous income or miscellaneous expense. We'll pull up the Quicken. We'll see, that was a meeting expense or revenue. So, so we don't have to contact you, either the treasurer or the president, with that question. So most chapters use Quicken. So if you're looking for the Quicken file, unless Quicken has changed over the last year, it's usually a .qdf file, and it's usually the largest file in the Quicken folder, and you could send that over to us. Quicken, in my experience, the most recent versions of Quicken have require a password. So if there's a password, please forward that to us as well, so that we can access the information. So Caitlin's going to be sending the financial package in January. Yep. Due date of March 1st. And well, I don't see any questions. So Caitlin, unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, feel free to reach out if there's any questions. We're happy to help you guys through this process. It might be new to some of you. It might be familiar to others, but we're here to help, and look forward to having a smooth tax filing season.
Yeah, well put. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.